Alright, here's the deal, I love this weapon. Not only does it have amazing performance, it's also, subjectively speaking, fun. What do I mean? Hey guys, welcome back. As always, my name is Leyzar, and today we're going to be rediving deeper into the Incarnon Latron. Incarnon weapons are not exactly new player friendly, so we're just going to tackle an endgame setup. That said though, I'm still going to be explaining a lot of the mechanics just so that anybody watching will understand how the weapon functions and how it should be built. Let's begin by checking out how the weapon handles without any mods equipped, and for that, just a couple of our regular free shots. The Incarnon Latron in normal form is, well, a Latron. This is a hit-scan semi-automatic attack that kicks like a bloody mule if you're not going to be using something like minus recoil effects. You gotta go for headshots in order to charge the weapon. Now that's not 100% accurate. Technically, you need to go for weak point hits in order to get Incarnon gauge. But if you're gonna be using something like a Banshee, Sonar, and Exposed Vulnerability to put some weak points on your targets, those shots will not be counting towards the Incarnon gauge. So we're back to headshots. You know what will help, however, multi-shot, because essentially the Incarnon gauge counts how many damage instances you put into that weak point. You're gonna need a grand total of 8. That is 8 shots, or with a plentiful amount of multi-shot, you can get it down to 1 shot on your target's head to get your full Incarnon bar of 40 charges. 40 charges of what? Explosive, bouncy projectiles of death, my friends. This is what the Incarnon Latron is all about. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. This projectile upon contact will be exploding in a 4-meter range with a damage drop-off of 20%. Now let's talk about damage types, since there are 2 damage instances going on. First, the projectile making contact with a target, and secondary, the explosion. The projectile making contact with a target will have impact damage, and it has a guaranteed impact proc. As for the explosion itself, heat damage and puncture. Yes, I know it's weird for an explosion to have puncture, but yes, it does. As for the behavior of the projectile, this one is going to be bouncing up to 6 times as it makes contact with an enemy or a surface. But unfortunately, if it makes contact with water, as you guys know, water is the supreme force in the universe of Warframe. Anything touching it meets its demise. So no, it's not going to be bouncing off of water, it just stops. The projectile does not lose any damage as it bounces. There's only one thing that it does lose, and that is travel speed. Every single time it bounces, it loses a little bit of travel speed, but you're still getting 100% the damage. And yes, Prime Firestorm does work on the projectile, pushing the range from 4 meters all the way to 5.76, and it is a viable option. Evolution 1 enables the transformation and Incarnon form. Evolution 2 is where you get your first real choice, starting with Riddled Target. This will be your best in slot, increases base damage by 6. The secondary talent, Swift Punishment, also increases base damage by 6, and I want to talk a bit about these base damage increases. When it comes to Incarnon weapons, you see a lot of them have base damage increases through their Incarnations. Unfortunately, these talents don't really work all that well with condition overload-like effects for ranged weapons. Of course, I'm talking about Galvanized Aptitude, Galvanized Savvy, and Galvanized Shot. In some weapons cases, for example the Incarnon Turret, you don't really care because the benefit it still provides is just huge. Basically, a mod such as Galvanized Aptitude is one of the most, if not the most powerful mod on your build, regardless if this works or doesn't. You're still gonna be getting that base damage increase, but it kinda works outside of the equation, weirdly enough. Now the second part on Riddle Target is what we're after. On Puncture status effect, 25% multi-shot for 8 seconds, this one stacks up 4 times, that is 100% multi-shot, and this talent should be up all the time as long as you are shooting at your enemies. The second part of Swift Punishment is again something I'd like to discuss, with sprint speed 1/2 or higher, 30% direct damage per status type affecting the target. Once again, a condition overload-like effect. And these normally don't really apply to what? Explosions. 75% of your projectile's damage comes from that explosion, and only 25% from the projectile making contact with a target, where you will see that damage increase. Once again, we are going for Riddled Target. Evolution 3, now this is dealer's choice for the most part. This is the utility tree. You can either go for minus 60% weapon recoil. If you're gonna go for this one, the weapon becomes dead still in normal form, but you also got an extra slot that also reduces, or you can use in that slot a mod that reduces recoil by the same amount, 60%. You can also increase the base magazine capacity by 15. This will only be active in normal form. And finally, Marksman and Focus minus 30% zoom. I know a lot of you guys hate zoom, so I guess you're just gonna be going for this one. For me, I don't really feel that much of a difference with any. I guess I can just not unlock my Excellence slot and go for Marksman Hand. Though I do think in the Excellence slot you can also go for projectile flight speed, but weirdly enough, last time I checked, it didn't actually affect the projectile of the Latron. So there you go. As for the final three, this should be hashtag the best one. Yes, we're gonna be going with critical parallel, increases base critical chance by 24%, and base critical damage multiplier by 0.2x. This is simply hashtag the way to go. Deadhead, 100% headshot damage, fantastic if you're going for the marksman route. In normal form, in more specific. Are you gonna do that with the Incarnon Latron? Well, I don't know if there's anybody actually doing that, but in that case, go for Deadhead. As for flensing spikes, oh, and I googled what flensing means, yeah. Removes 20%, no, don't Google that. No, for real, don't Google that. I'm not baiting you, just leave it alone. Remove 20% of enemy armor per puncture status. Normally, we use something like a primer to remove the armor from our enemies, so you don't really need this one. Once again, critical parallel. Incarnon weapons are not exactly new player friendly per se, because you can't really get that Genesis adapter all that quick. And here's the thing, the Latron in its normal form, even the Prime variant, not exactly a fantastic weapon. So instead of building this, in case you're a newer player, build this instead. As for our veteran friends, well, you know what, we're gonna be checking out an endgame setup, and I'm just gonna tease you with this one. I'm not gonna use it because I fully understand that a lot of you guys simply don't like or want Rivens or have Rivens. A multi-shot critical damage Latron Riven is, it's just GG because the Riven disposition is still 4 out of 5. So yes, my friends, if you do have a Riven, for all intents and purposes, go for that Riven. But instead of what, Laser? Well, you can just unequip the Bane mod, because I know a lot of you guys still hate Bane mods. Hold on, what's that mod over there? Semi-rifle cannonade? What gives? Check this one out. This is still a fairly new-ish mod that you don't see on a whole lot of builds. Only compatible with semi-auto trigger, fire rate cannot be modified, 240% damage and 1.5 meters worth of punch. What does punch through do on the Incarnon Latron? Nothing in Incarnon form. It has no effect in Incarnon form. What we are using this one is for the flat damage, believe it or not. Well, hold on, why aren't you using Galvanized Aptitude? As stated before, the extra damage part of Galvanized Aptitude does not apply to the explosions, and roughly 75% of our total projectile damage comes from that explosion. So no Galvanized Aptitude in the case of the Incarnon Latron, unless you build it for normal mode. Flat damage, well hold on, what about double tap? Double tap now works on the Latron, and here's the story of double tap. Initially, it did not work on the Incarnon Latron at all, even though it seemed like it was kind of snapshotting flat damage, it was not. Then they said they fixed it. But they didn't actually fix it, and then they really fixed it. And now it works on the Incarnon Latron, but we're still not gonna be using it. Allow me to demonstrate why that is. Basically, this mod is hella unreliable. So essentially, we're gonna go Incarnon form, like so. And I'm gonna keep on firing at this group of enemies, like so. And you will see that I'm actually dropping double tap non-stop. This is how you would use the Latron. Yeah, you aim for the feet, so you get that bounce. And I never even get close to the maximum 500%. And I know what you're gonna say, hold on there, Laser, it's not 500%, 20 times 20 is 400. Yes, but you see, it takes into account the base 100% when it first shows you a stack. Take a look at the upper right portion of the screen right about now. First stack always starts at 120%, like so. The only way to fully stack this one, which is up to 500%, is just to use it normally with a bunch of multi-shot, like so. Well, hold on, multi-shot, that's the problem. For sure it's multi-shot, alright, fine. Let's go, split chamber and vigilante armaments. Hashtag the multi-shots. Now I'm gonna zoom in on my buffs just so you can see exactly what's going on. So what's going on? Is it not all that great? Well, it is all that great if you're gonna be building the Incarnon Latron for its normal form, which I'm assuming not a whole lot of you guys actually do. One last thing you should know about this one if you choose to use it, even though I don't recommend it because it's highly unreliable, the explosion component of the Incarnon Latron will not be proccing, as you can see, double tap, sadly. If you want to proc double tap, your projectile needs to make contact directly with a target. And yes, if it bounces between targets, hallelujah, you're gonna get multiple stacks. But even like so, you're still gonna get to see that buff drop off simply because of the lackluster duration. So in my opinion, it's simply not worth using double tap for Incarnon form, only for normal form. Hunter Munitions is bad nowadays because somebody told me. No, Hunter Munitions is not bad. It has better competition from other procs, but 100 Munitions is still a fantastic mod, and you should have it on your Incarnon Latron. Unless you want to do something a little bit more wacky. Let me know in the comment section down below. Primary Frostbite, check this one out. Critical damage and multi-shot. Beautiful, but how are you gonna proc it? Simple, you use your primer, use a Diriga with a Hellstrom, and make sure that on it, you're gonna be proccing two things. First, corrosive to remove armor of enemies in case you are fighting enemies that have armor. And of course, a little bit of cold for that primary frostbite. You can use something like so. A lot of you guys keep asking for me to use the Autokin Battle Group instead. Fine, here's the Autokin Battle Group, level 205 Steel Path modifiers, the works. And this is what it does to it. Now, the reason why I don't use the Autokin Battle Group is because these guys are bloody weaklings and they just die from a sneeze. So, now that I showed you the Battle Group and the fact that the Latron essentially murders it, we're gonna spawn in the same 205 Steel Path, but Corrupted Heavy Goons Eximus. And yes, I'm aware it's not exactly the most realistic of tests because you're not gonna find a group of 20 Corrupted Heavy Goons Eximus in a single spot, but hey! Now let me show you a fresh run so you can see how fast you can actually charge the Incarnon Latron. I'm gonna go for a headshot that is what, 50%-ish charge, and unfortunately my target dies because yes, with a build such as this one, you are essentially just murderizing anything in normal form as well. As for Incarnon form, what can I tell you, my friends? The Tenno Space program, there they go, is alive and well. The weapon just destroys everything without any real issue. Look at that. And if the contact damage doesn't get them, then the damage over time, you bet your ass it will. And these are still level 205 Corrupted Heavy Goons with the Steel Path modifiers enabled. Now the weapon is also fully stacked. Let's respawn them one more time so you can see what the weapon can do. Say cheese! Oh, beautiful. Glorious. Carnage, absolutely amazing weapon. Believe it or not, this is still my favorite, and I always give the top spot to the Latron. While there are other weapons under the turret that are a lot easier to use than this one because you don't need to get headshots in order to charge the weapon, and it basically links to additional targets, a lot of additional targets. This is still my favorite. It's just so satisfying to use. But what about some actual gameplay, huh? Now this build is fantastic versus the Autokin, but if we're gonna be fighting Murmur, you need a couple of changes because Murmur are weak to radiation and electricity, and I'm talking about contact damage. You can make radiation with a single mod. Stormbringer, I recommend you go for 90s over 60s in this case because the Latron is not exactly the type of weapon to go necessarily for a status build. We're also gonna be using Prime Firestorm instead of a Bay mod, and yes, I am gonna be using my Raven because I want to. And I can. So I will. Boom, boom, beautifully, boom! Red crits galore. Now, I'm not using Citrines 4. As you can see, the enemies do not have that little crystal looking thing on them. What I am using is Arcane Avenger with Citrine. And you should too because it is beautiful. We also got Arcane Rage on. Now, if we are to open up and just essentially use everything in our arsenal, we can also get better priming using Citrine's 3, not just survivability through her 2. And we can also use her 4. That is not really necessary, but there you go. And just bomb galore to your heart's content. Obviously, the weapon is just gonna absolutely annihilate anything and everything that stands before it. It was doing so before, and it will do so again. One thing that you may be interested to know, check out what happens to the Incarnon gauge if I hit the crystal. Nothing. So you're not going to be getting Incarnon gauge if you're going to be hitting the crystal. You still need to hit weak points. In the case of the Calervan, as per usual, those are going to be the two things on their arms, those canister looking things. Now, my friends, you know what I always say, I can stay here all day and prove the fact that this one can kill trash, just like 85% of weapons, steel level, base level steel path, granted. But I think a test versus Acolytes will be a whole lot more revealing, yeah? Flash, flash, Santa is coming to town. Oh, actually it's getting close to Christmas right now. I wonder what it'll bring us outside of coal and Warframe 9099. Alright, what I want to do is get a little bit of Incarnon charge on this guy. There we go, that's perfect. Oh. I think he already got damage down. Okay, it's Angst. She's over here somewhere. What is she? Hello, Angst. Goodbye, Angst. Oh my god. That was beautiful. Now, granted, I think she got accidentally damaged down by my residual area of effect. She was like on 90 or 80% health there, but still, it's okay. We'll do one more Acolyte. Flash, flash, we got another one, so let's get some Incarnon charge. Okay, stand still. There we go. That's plenty Incarnon charge. It's Torment. Okay, this is not the bubble guy. We're just gonna wait for him here. We're not gonna use Citrine's thing. We're just gonna open fire! And there he goes. That was a second. He met the Incarnon Latron. And I do believe, my friends, that's all the convincing I need to do, because you know what? It's true. My opinion on this weapon is a lot biased. After the Plasmor, this is still my favorite weapon in the game. The difference between this and the Plasmor is the fact that this can kill what the Plasmor cannot kill. Not as fast, not as good. And it's so much fun. Any type of corridor mission is a lot more enjoyable with the bouncy projectiles. It's just enjoyable to run and gun. Not that other weapons aren't, but enjoyment at the end of the day is subjective and down to the individual. I can only praise the performance of this weapon and tell you that for me, this is one hell of a weapon and still my top Incarnon pick to this day. As always, my name is LeyzarGamingViews. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, channel, subscribe only if you enjoy the content. If you got any feedback for me, let me know in the comment section down below. You can also catch me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. And by all intents and purposes, what kind of wacky builds did you come up with? I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.